What is going on, YouTube? Sushi here, bringing you guys another Digimon BT7 deck profile. This time we have probably my favorite deck to play in the format for fun, and it's also a very competitive deck. If you're seeing a bunch of yellow, this is a really good matchup against yellow. So just know that going forward, I'll go over some of the plays and stuff about why it's so good. But before we get into that, as you can see, it is purple Cherubimon hybrids. This is a very angry pinata that when popped can be very destructive. Some super fun combos. As you'll see, I'll show you the card list as we go by. There's a little mix of some yellow in here. I know a lot of people have been seeing a list like this after playing or after seeing Kwong's video. I'd kind of been brainstorming this list before the set came out, and I was glad to see that other people were also thinking about it because it is super fun. And I'll go over some changes that are different than his list. Of course, I don't know his exact list, but go over some of my list cards and why I chose the choices I did. But without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into the deck profile. So first off, we're going to start off with our 4 eggs. Of course, we're running 4 yellow Upamon. Sometimes this format, if you run against yellow, can go a little long, so I definitely see running more of these, but really 4 isn't too bad because most of the time you're trying to get your yellow cards into the trash as soon as possible. You want to make sure you have some to digivolve on top of, but this is good to get them. You want them in the trash, so having 4 isn't the worst thing. A lot of times you're going to be digivolving on top of your tamers or cheating your rookies back out, so that's something to note, but it just has the best inheritable. When you have a level, or when you have 3 or less security and you swing, you can draw a card. So it's just really good, gives you the extra draw power you need during the mid game. I don't have a way in this specific list to burn through security, which I'll go over, but that's just the best overall Digimon to have as your rookies or your eggs. Speaking of rookies, we have 3 copies of Bushi Agumon. You could easily cap this out. You could go to 4 copies and adjust some of the numbers that I'll go over. But I've really liked 3 because sometimes I want to hard play a rookie. And Bushi being 5, if I don't have him, he either passes my opponent over. If they have a memory tamer, it can pass him over to 4 or more, whereas like if I have something, say like a Salamon or a Cutemon, which you'll see in a second, I can pass them. If I'm at 1, I pass them to 3, or 0, pass them to 3 with Cutemon. So it's just overall really good, and usually you're, like I said, you're trying to get this guy back in the trash so you can cheat him out and maybe swing for some gameplays. So we run 3, he's just overall good. 3K kind of comes up every now and then when you want to swing over stuff too, so it's pretty nice. And then we run 3 Salamon, 3 copies of BT2 Salamon. This is just the on deletion one. If you have 3 or less security, you recover. It's a 4 cost. Like I said, sometimes it's good to memory choke. You have a way to gain a little bit of memory, and so if you don't have any better play, you can't always drop this and they have to deal with it. It's a good target for some of your on deletion for your own Digimon effects. To pop your own Digimon, you can pop it, use Death Claw to pop something else, or Calling to get some more purple cards back from your trash, and then to get the recovery, especially if you swing in and live. Sometimes I've done that and it's like full value, yes, pop it, and then go ahead and get your recovery. So we run 3 of those. 4 is a little bit too much. Like I said, I'm trying not to max out on the yellow cards because I do run a bunch of purple cards in this deck. And then 2 copies of Cutemon. I really like 2 copies of Cutemon. You could definitely cut this down. If you wanted to run the Bushi, you could cut this down to 1 and play a 4th Bushi. But I like seeing 3. There's a whole lot of cards in this format, a lot of decks that run things that cheat for less cost, like green hybrids is one, and then basically any hybrid deck, if they have a tamer, their level 5 usually digivolves for 1, so it does help slow down yellow, blue, green, all the colors except I believe black doesn't have one. So I do like mainboarding 2 Cutemon. Again, 3K kind of comes up every now and then when you want to swing over smaller stuff. And then we have a few more utility rookies. This is Bokomon. I only run 2. I was running 3 at one point, but I don't always need to see them, and you can cheat them back out with Cherubimon's effect. But of course, on play, you add your hybrid or your 10 warriors or your tamer. We don't run any 10 warriors, so really we're just looking for our hybrids and our tamers. Not a bad turn 1 play. His other effect, of course, is if your tamer digivolves, you can reduce the memory cost by 2. So it does come up. It is always a good card to have. I only run it at 2 because I don't need to see it all the time, and I can usually recycle it out. Next up comes one of my favorite cards of this deck. I started running it recently, Nemon. This card is really fun. So on play, you get to play a tamer with an inherited effect, which is always pretty good because, turn 1, drop this down, you drop a Nemon. Then you get to play the Koichi from your hand to cycle, draw one, discard one. But then also his effect is all turns. If you did not know, whenever one of your Digimon with a Tamer in its sources is deleted, you may play a Tamer from your trash. So, you know, that same Digimon is deleted, you can play that Tamer, so like a Koichi, or if it's got a mat in the sources for your memory, you can replay the mat. Again, it is an all turns effect. I've had it happen where my opponent tried to blow up my Rihimon or maybe my Rebellymon or something to get rid of it so they didn't have to deal with it anymore and didn't have to worry about me going into Cherubimon, but it did have a Tamer in the sources because that's the only way I can get my purple stacks up, and I just dropped another Tamer. I dropped that Tamer right back on the field. And like I said, if it was a mat, then I can recycle back that level 4, level 5 that I needed. So being all turns is really good. I like running 2. I don't think you would run more than 2 because you do only run the 4 inheritable Tamers. Next up, we'll have our hybrid level 4s. I'll just go ahead and throw them all out. We run 4 Lowimon and 4 Kaiserleomon. You have to max out. These are the only level 4s in the deck. The one limiting factor on a lot of cards, a lot of decks for this, except for, I guess, the colors that aren't green, blue, and yellow, or green, blue, and red, because they have extra hybrids. Purple and yellow just have 4 hybrids to Digivolve for 2, level 4s at least. So you have to max out on these. I like to see Kaiserleomon. If you ever have a choice, you almost always take Kaiserleomon, because Lowimon is okay. He does Digivolve for 2 like regular, but he doesn't have any other effect. Whereas Kaiserleomon, if you have a Koichi, he gains retaliation. So it's a way to get rid of some of your bigger opponents' Digimon that go to swing in. So you don't have to worry about dealing like if a Susanomon comes out and swings, you know, you can always Digivolve into this and take it out. Usually if Susanomon swings and you're alive the next turn, you're probably not going to make it the next turn, but he also Digivolves on top of level 4 for 1, because his effect does only have to be Koichi or a hybrid. So if you don't have a Koichi, you have the memory, you can Digivolve into Lowimon or another Kaiser, and then Digivolve into this Kaiser to gain the retaliation. So Kaiserleomon's really good. You have ways to recycle these back out, which kind of makes up for them only having 8 in total, but it's still a limiting factor. Sometimes you have to see them, and you just can't find them fast enough. Then we have our level 5 hybrids. This is 4 copies of Rihimon. So he, like I said earlier, he's one of the level 5s that cheats onto or not, doesn't cheat, but reduces the cost to 1 basically to Digivolve on top of your level 4s if there's a Tamer in the sources. And then if he has a hybrid in the sources on deletion, you get to just play any Tamer from the trash. So that's important, whereas some of the other effects, you know, like Nemon's effect, where you can only play, or like Antilamon, which was another option I thought about running, and I tried to play it, but it just never really did enough to play a level 3 or a 3 cost, or, you know, an inherited effect. He can just play the mat back out. So it really does work to get more Tamers on the field. This helps your recursion. A lot of times you do definitely want to go into Cherubimon, but sometimes it's not a bad idea to get this guy popped so you can have another Tamer to continue your plays, or just have Tamers on the field for some of your removal cards like Shores, which we'll go over in a little bit. But 4 copies of Rihimon is a must. And then we run 2 copies of Rebellymon. So Rebellymon really facilitates the engine of the deck pretty well. He helps you discard. So when you Digivolve into him, of course, you discard a card from your hand to give him blocker and retaliation. So you can get rid of cards that you don't need to see. Maybe you have a whole bunch of yellow cards that you really want in the trash, but you are in your hand. You can pitch those. You can pitch a Tamer so that you can Digivolve follow up into Cherubimon. So now your Cherubimon has blocker and retaliation, and then get to replay out your Tamer and then clear the board. So that's just always a good combo to go into. And like I said, this is it not only facilitates the engine, but being able to have blocker retaliation in and of itself is pretty good, because it stops plays like green from trying to pierce through it to then do the security checks or trash the security with Ancient Beetlemon. And then it also stops things like Jesmon. Jesmon still is a threat in this format. Do not sleep on Jesmon. It will come up out of nowhere and it will really wreck your day. Having these 2 Rebellymon in the main board helps against that, against a bunch of matchups. So I really do like the Rebellymon, but if you run into a deck where you don't think this card is ever going to come up, there are sideboard options to remove it out, which I'll go over later in the video. And then, of course, we have the big bad boy himself. We have 3 copies of Cherubimon. I didn't max out. 4 felt a little bricky, since you only have 6 level 5s to go into and 8 level 4s. Sometimes this card ends up in your hand and you don't want it. You have ways to recycle this card back from your trash, so I don't always need to see it in hand super early in the game. And so 3 really felt really good. He is a 4 to Digivolve, which I have a few ways to get around in this list that I'll go over, so that's like a limiting factor. If you can find a way to Digivolve into him onto your turn to then pop him to use his effect, that is the most ideal thing, but sometimes you do have to pass turn, and you have to make sure he lives or that you can get the setup pretty well. So just know that for in the future. But into his effect, when you Digivolve into him, you get to play a Tamer from your trash, purple Tamer, any cost. So of course you can bring back your Mats or your Koichis. But then for every Tamer you have in play, this doesn't require purple Tamers, just every Tamer in general, you get to delete a level 4 or lower Digimon on your opponent's side of the field. So if you have 4 or 5 Tamers on the field, you can really just clear a board, which is really, really nice. I've had some people try to overextend, try to set up a board that like they're going to OTK the next turn. Well, I have 4 Tamers set up, I can just go in a Cherubimon and wipe their field. So that's really nice. And then of course the Pinata effect, as everybody calls it. When you Digivolve, when he's deleted, for every Tamer you have in play, you may play a level 3 Digimon from your trash. This is any color. This isn't color restricted. So that's why we run the lower end. We play the Bushis if we can swing for game. You know, he's on the field, we swing, he dies, or we pop him ourselves. We play out, you know, 2 or 3 Bushis, swing the rest of security checks, Salamon to give us recovery. If we can't finish it up, Cutemon to hopefully stop production effect, evolution reduction effects, Bokomon for more cycle, and if we have Tamers, we can then go into our Tamers for free, or if we can get 2 Bokomon out, he also gives us the search that we can like pair with stuff like Neimon, where let's say you play a Neimon and a Bokomon. You use Bokomon, you don't have a Tamer in hand to play off a Neimon, use Bokomon, see if you can't find that Koichi. You find the Koichi, then you activate Neimon's effect to then play the Koichi for his on-play effect. So good combos all around there. He's just super, super fun card. If you have the right amount of memory gain, you can really feel, it feels like almost like a Lilith Loop deck. I've cycled 2 Cherubis in the same turn before, and it just feels so fun, and it's such a great combo, and it's just such a fun deck to go over. Also, small note, he is a 13 play cost, so he gets around stuff like Zort, which most of the time won't matter, I guess, but I've had it come up maybe once, so just know that. And then we play one little spicy tech card. We play Susanomon. There's a lot of yellow at my locals, and I'm expecting to see yellow in a lot of events. So sometimes in game 1, if they're going to play a really grind fest, and I'm about to deck myself out, which I have done in yellow against yellow before, I needed a way to basically get more cards so I could finish up that last little play. Susanomon's the perfect option. You'll have a bunch of cards in hand or trash if you're about to deck yourself out, of course, so you can turn one of your Tamers into a Susanomon to pop a big Digimon on their side of the field. This is a good way to remove maybe a big threat, an opposing Susanomon or something like that. And then, of course, you know, if they don't get rid of him, he's checking 3 security next turn, a big 15k body. So super fun. If you have him on top of like a Koichi, then of course if he dies, you gain a memory. Oh well. But usually you'll go on top of something like an Analog Boy so you can keep your purple cards in rotation. So I really do like this tech, but if you're not playing against yellow, and he might not ever come up in other decks that aren't yellow, so he's an easy sideboard option too, which I like to make try to make decks with sideboard thoughts in mind so that I can know what to remove as we get to that point. And then onto the Tamers. Of course, we run 4 copies of Koichi. I've seen some lists run 3 and then run things like Kari, but 4 copies of Koichi just feels really good. Good cycle. He plays well with Neimon. His on deletion effect for his Inherit is just so, so good. Another thing to remember about this, especially with Rihimon's effect, is on deletion effects in the Inheritable. So most of the time on deletion effects they go to the trash and then they activate and resolve in the trash. So if they were to remove, so let's say Rihimon, you use his effect triggers in the trash, but then you take him back out before you activate his effect won't activate. Well, if Koichi's in the source, let's say your Rihimon dies and Koichi's in the source, and you decide to play the Koichi back with Rihimon's effect, it is currently ruled that as long as the Digimon that had the source, so the Rihimon in this situation, stays in the trash, then you get to gain the memory off of Koichi. Most of the time, is that really going to come up? Are you just going to not gain the memory first and then play the Koichi? No, you'll most of the time want to gain the memory, but in case it does come up in some niche situation where you want to have that certain interaction, that is something that you have to know about, that you don't have to worry about gaining the memory first and then activating the effect, but it's just a good thing to know just in case somebody tries to stop you if you're like, hey, Koichi's not in the trash anymore, and it's like, doesn't matter, Rihimon's still in the trash and he's the one that activates the effect. But again, when you play him, he cycles you a card. Draw one, discard one. He's like a Demi-Meramon effect. Just really good for the deck. Purple Tamer, of course. Then we run 3 copies of Memory Matt. So this is a good way to recycle back. He's just really good to recycle back off of Cherubimon. Had it happen a lot of times where I'll find a way to discard a card early. So I'll discard a Matt, you know, maybe off a Koichi effect. Digivolve into Rihimon, Digivolve into Cherubimon, play the Matt back, and then I can recycle a card maybe that I've pitched at another effect or some point. It's also good if you know, pitch this off of something and then bring it back with Rihimon's effect. So there's easy ways to cheat this out without having to play the 4 cost. Sometimes it feels bad to like turn 1 drop this, but sometimes you really need that memory for your follow-up plays. And then of course this effect where you grab a purple option or Digimon card from your trash. This is just a good way to recycle your ways to pop your own Digimon and then your purple level 4 hybrids that you need, because like I said, you run a little low on the level 4s, but you have ways to get them back out just in case they either end up in trash or they end up, you know, you swing in, they die, and you're like, man, I can't find a purple level 4. You have Matt to help recycle. So we run 3 because we really want to see him, but we don't want to max out. It feels a little tricky. Here's a card. Most people play starter deck or Kari from, I think it's BT4. I've opted to play 3 starter deck Matts. So I did try both of them. Starter deck Kari does have its uses for sure, because, you know, if you have a bunch on the field, then you suspend and you make your opponent pass a turn. Starter deck Matt helps the loop plays a lot. One, he's a 2 cost, so if you know you don't have a like a Koichi or something to start off on turn 1, you can definitely Digivolve your rookie for your yellow rookie and drop a starter deck Matt to choke your memory or your opponent at less memory. His effect, for those of you who may not notice because this card doesn't see a whole lot of play, and may not have ever seen play until this, except for like some fringe decks. Your turn when one of your Digimon is deleted. So it is a your turn effect. Just know that you can't use this on your opponent's turn. When one of your Digimon is deleted, you can spend it to gain a memory. This comes up because I've had to maybe if I have the memory to go into I'm at 3 memory because of Matt, and I want to go into my Cherubimon, I have something else on the field that I can take out. So I'll like swing in, maybe my rookie dies, and then I'll suspend Matt, gain the memory, go to 4, and then go into Cherubimon, and then continue my plays from there. Because, you know, if you have multiple of these, or maybe you have Analog Youth, you can then pop your own Cherubimon, and then keep your plays going, gain more memory if you have more of these on the field. Koichi's effect to stay at 1 or to stay at 0 or go up. Analog Youth, which we'll go over in a second, like I said. There's just a lot of good interactions to get the benefit of Matt, and I really do like it. Like it being a lower cost, Kari does of course have its uses to help keep you from dying on some games, but this Matt does help facilitate like combo plays a little bit more. So I have enjoyed it a lot. I run it at 3, of course, so it doesn't feel too bricky. Then we run 2 copies of Analog Youth, Analog Boy. He's really good at 2. I feel like if I had him at 3 too often, I'd end up milling cards that I would definitely want to see earlier. But having him at 2, it never feels bad, because I would always like to have a 1 on the field. You could probably maybe switch it at one of the Mats out for another one, the starter deck Mats, but I do like it at 2. If you have multiple of these and one of your Digimon dies, of course you get to gain it to memory, but you also get that off a Mat. And this has to be a level 5 Digimon with sources. So in blue is one of your worst matchups because it's constantly stripping sources. So, you know, Nemon doesn't activate if you're playing against blue most of the time, because most of the time your Digimon doesn't have the Tamer underneath because it's been stripped by like a Howling Memory Boost or Sorojo or Kumamon. And Rihimon doesn't activate because you don't have a Tamer or a hybrid in the sources. You know, Analog Youth will then, you know, if the Rihimon dies, you don't have sources, Analog Youth can't activate. So it's good, but it doesn't always come up. Now, his is an all turns effect, so if you're playing against another deck, it does help. And then, of course, whenever you get the search off of him, you add the Digimon and you throw the rest of the trash, which does help add to a card that I'm going to go over here in a second. But it also helps to, you know, keep your plays going sometimes. So I do like 2. 3 felt a little too much for me, but 2 felt good. Onto the options, I played 2 copies of Jack Raid. So this is one of the ways that I keep the Cherubimon on my turn. If I have enough cards in trash, you play the Jack Raid and you can go from 3 to 4. And it's also a Hammer Spark out of security. You gain the 2 memory. So the issue that comes up sometimes is you don't have enough cards in trash. But so maybe you opt to play something like Blinding Ray, which burns you with security. If you play starter deck Kari or BT4 Kari instead of Matt, I would say play Blinding Ray. But also, Blinding Ray doesn't do anything out of security, and it just feels really bad when you see it come out of security. But it does play well with Kari, because then you get to use Blinding Ray and get a whole bunch of memory because of Kari. But I do like Jack Ray just for the security effect, and it synergizes well. It doesn't burn me as security, because sometimes, like I said, these games, there's a lot of aggressive decks in the format, and if maybe I don't have quite that last game winning play, and I maybe misjudge my memory usage, Blinding Ray hurts more than it helps sometimes. Whereas Jack Ray doesn't require the Kari, and it can still just as well continue the plays, and then I can keep on continuing the plays with starter deck Matt. So I do like 2 Jack Ray. I was running it at 3 for a little bit, but I decided to swap it out for our Digimon deletion cards. So I'll just go ahead and play both of them out. 2 Deathclaw and 2 Calling. I was running 1 Calling, 2 Deathclaw, and 3 Jack Raid, but sometimes Jack Raid in the early game is just an absolute brick. If there's no way to get rid of it, and you feel bad getting rid of it off of a discard effect, but if there's no way to get rid of it, it just sits in your hand. It just feels really, really bad. So I decided to switch it up, and this feels really good, being able to, a consistent way to pop your Digimon. Calling, of course, to help get your purple cards back. Deathclaw, of course, to pop something. Calling comes out of security. Deathclaw kills something out of security. So it's really good. A lot of level 4s, a lot of ways to kill Bokomon with this. I hate Bokomon in the mirror most of the time, or in any matchup, because he really does facilitate strong plays, especially if there's multiple Bokomon. So I really enjoyed running a 2-2 split on both of these, but you could definitely put in another Jack Raid or, Blinding Ray. And then I run 2 Shores. This is my big removal spell. I don't, you might see that high-end Digimon are hard to deal with, other than the retaliation effect, but Shores is really good. I've had it several times where just Shoresing the field is really good. There's a lot of decks that just stop at level 4, level 5 consistently, especially with all the hybrids, but if they do go into a level 6, that's where you kind of struggle. And if they're going to be really level 6 heavy, you have to rely on your retaliation or some sideboard cards, which of course you'll find when you see the high level Digimon, see how to get rid of them. But I really do like playing the 2 Shores. 3 felt a little bricky sometimes because you are recycling your Digimon or your Tamers a lot, but 3 always felt good. And if it comes out of security late in the game when you have a decent setup, it's always really good to just wipe your field when your opponent may have game. So 2 Shores always felt good. But that's it for the main board. We're just going to go through the sideboard really quickly. Try not to dilly-dally too much. We run 2 copies of Gazimon. This is kind of self-explanatory. You don't have the purple Digimon, but you also don't have a few other cards. You're running other cards that don't Digivolve, other than yellow Digimon. So it doesn't always feel bad to just hard drop this. And then off a Cherubimon effect, you can help stop it. If you want to get this out, cheat it out with a Cherubimon effect 1 turn. It feels good then if you're going to run into a lot of Bokomon, like decks that are maybe maining for Bokomon, or blue memory memory boost decks, stuff like that. It's just really good to help stop those. So I really do enjoy Gazimon as the 2 of. Then we run 2 of Neo Devimon. Sometimes this card wins you games just by hard playing it turn 1. So of course Neo Devimon, its opponent's turn effect is when they play a Tamer gain 3 memory. So I have hard played this against yellow hybrids before, and it's like, you want to go ahead and play that Kari or TK and Kari, go ahead. You're at 0 memory. So it's just the same as playing a level 4 or a 4 cost option or Tamer. So it's really strong just sitting on the board. They have to get rid of it, and if by the time they get rid of it you have another Neo Devimon, then they have to try to deal with it a second time. So the Inherit doesn't come up as often because not a lot of Tamers are suspended, other than against stuff like Shine, but when your opponent's Tamer becomes suspended, gain 1 memory. So that's not a once per turn, but they are opponent's turn effects. So if security checks don't count for this anyway, but if they have some way to cheat one out on your turn, that doesn't do anything because, again, it's only on opponent's turn. But Neo Devimon is just so good in this format. Then I run another Deathclaw if I need more ways. They're not going to have high-end stuff, and I need more ways to pop my little guys, to pop their little guys. Deathclaw is just really good, so I added another one so I could have a little bit more. Maybe I don't need Calling, so I just put 3 of these and then 1 Calling instead, kind of like how the deck was originally set up, as I mentioned. But I run 1 more in the side. I also run 1 more Shores on the side. Wide decks that stop at lower levels, this is just a good way if they're going to try to set up turn. Green sometimes tries to set up, if they don't ever see their top end, they'll try to set up a big board. This is a good way to punish that by you know, playing this, clearing the board, not having to deal with it. So we run another one just in case a situation like that comes up. If we run into big stuff that is hard to deal with, we run 2 copies of Wyvern's Breath. It's basically yellow Gaia Force, so out of security you get something -15. This doesn't do much against Jessamon most of the time, so I wouldn't usually worry about this with Jessamon. I'd keep the Rebellions, that kind of be my big thing, because Jessamon is usually always going to be bigger just off of inherits or off of his effects alone, and especially if they have a seal. But this is kind of good to get rid of, like, you know, they have a Susanoo-amon that they Digivolved into and had to pass turn. You just go ahead and delete it with this effect. So run 2 of those. And then since we do have white Tamers, I just run 2 emergency program shutdown. This is good against stuff like Beelstarmon's going to show up still in the format. You know, somebody's going to try to play like yellow hybrid security control, so that's another good thing to side in. But this is always good. It stops your opponent from playing option cards, and then whenever it comes out of security, it also then stops them from playing more option cards, and then you get to add this to your hand. So really good if people start trying to do like yellow hybrid security control. It's going to happen. Just wait, and this card's going to be even better for those. But you know, yellow's already kind of feels like security control, so it's just a good sideboard option if you're running like the yellow bottom end. So, but other than that, guys, that is the list. This deck has been so fun to play. Like I said, there's definitely a few interactions that take some time to learn, because you have certain memory tamers on the field, certain ways to gain memory all in one turn. Just being able to constantly cycle those, and you know, like I said, being able to pop like 2 Cherubis in the same turn can definitely win you games, especially if you can Bushi, it dies, Bushi, it dies, pop the Cherubimon again, throw out more Bushis. So you don't even, you know, necessarily need the 4 Bushis, but even good combos, just to flood the field and make it so your opponent almost cannot win is just, it's kind of like a Lilith Loop thing, but it feels a little bit more interactive. There's more than just one play in, there's like Lilith Loop, your main thing is definitely trying to get to the loop more than anything. This one, sometimes you don't even need to see Cherubi. Sometimes just hybrids, keeping a board presence, recycling things with Rihimon, wiping stuff out with Schwartz, Deathclaw, and stuff like that. Just feels really good, and it is definitely one of my favorite decks of the format, by far. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching the video. We just, at the time of this recording, just hit 100 subscribers. That is incredible for me. When I started making this channel, I didn't think it would. Started constantly uploading. I didn't think it would happen as quickly as it did, and it's really, really thankful for you guys for getting me to 100 subscribers. We're gonna try to get there up to the next 500. I think will be the big one that I'm gonna aim for, and then of course 1,000 and beyond. But you know, that's way down the road. But thank you very much for watching the video. If you have any other options on the deck or any things you would like to add, any questions you would like to ask, be sure to leave comments down below. But until next time, guys, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you enjoy the content, like the video. And until next time, see you around.